Hey, rockers and Ozzy fans, man. Thanks for coming back to Bloody F Mess Official. I've got a pretty cool treat for you tonight. Before I get into this Ozzy tale, I've got to tell you guys some great news. I have got my first sponsor of the channel. Yep, been doing this for over a year, and I've been wondering which mom and pop businesses out there are going to want to maybe subscribe to the channel. My first sponsor hit me up. Thank you to Big Al in Long Island, New York, for being the man to step up and make this happen. Big Al, thank you, my friend. Okay, so tonight's video is being brought to you by our first sponsor, and that is C&J Window Cleaning and Power Washing. You can find them on Facebook. They've got their own page, and they've got a group too, but the page is called C&J Window Cleaning and Power Washing. Give them a like on Facebook if you would. They are serving different parts of New York State, including Shirley, Dix Hills, Central Islip, Mastic, Manhattan, Blue Point, West Islip, Nassau County, Deer Park, and Suffolk County. These guys pride themselves on being the very best window cleaning and power washing business in New York. You can reach them if you have any window cleaning or power washing needs. Give them a try, folks. Tell them Bloody sent you, okay? And you can contact C&J Window Cleaning and Power Washing at 631-310-9858. Thank you, Big Al, and thank you, C&J Window Cleaning and Power Washing, for being my first sponsor. So let's get this going, man. My story tonight is going to be, it's going to be like a song medley. It's going to have a lot of little parts running together. A lot of the stuff that I might have spoken out in other videos, but I'm putting them all together, all my connections to Ozzy in one video. But I do encourage you to go to the video section and check out my story about seeing Ozzy in the Blizzard of Oz with Randy Rhoads and Motorhead back in 1981. That is on this channel, so feel free to scour the video section for some of these stories. The first one goes back to 1981. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri. I hear Ozzy's going to be playing, and by God, I wouldn't have missed that for nothing, right? So I get my old man, my father. He comes and takes me to the event, drops me off, and says, "Don't drink any alcohol, son, or do any of them funny, wacky tobaccies." My dad, not a big weed guy, and he knew what alcohol would do to me because, well, cuckoo. Anyway, that's another story. My dad takes me there. Everyone's getting in line, and I thought, what's the hurry? I'm going to go find the tour bus and try to meet Ozzy. So I'm walking around the place, and finally, in the middle of nowhere, parked in like a giant parking lot, there's the bus, completely alone and isolated. And guess who was on that bus? Ozzy and one like roadie or somebody, right? So I walk up to the bus, knock on the door, and I hear a, "Yeah?" I'm like, "Hey, man, I'm just here to say hi to Ozzy, man." And I hear Ozzy going, "Hey, mate," or something like that. He was talking to me, and I was like, oh, my God, he's going to come out and say hi. But he didn't. But here's what happened. The guy that opened the door said, "What's up, bloke," or whatever. And I go, "I'm here to meet Ozzy," like I say. And I'd like to get an autograph if I could. Well, Ozzy pops his head out. He's sitting behind the front seat, literally. So I'm looking at him through a crack like this. He's like, "Hey, how you doing then?" And I think he was kind of buzzed. Not positive, but I said, "Hey, Oz, could you sign something for me?" He's like, "Yeah, sure, man." So I give it to the guy. He hands it back to Ozzy, and still don't know why Ozzy didn't come out. Maybe he was naked. Maybe he was getting ready for the show. Who knows? But I give him this card from my wallet. Back in the day, I used to shop at a joke shop called Joker's Wild, right? I had a card that said on one side, "Are you stoned or stupid?" right? I didn't know that's the card I was going to pull out of my wallet, but I had nothing to get autographed. So I pull this card out, I give it to the guy. Ozzy reads it, and he starts just cracking up, man, like super effing loud. And apparently that really made him think that was hilarious, because "Are you stoned or stupid?" He probably thought, "Good one, ha ha ha." And he did. He laughed for a few minutes. It was really funny, man. And then he showed it to the other guy, and he was like looking at me like, "Are you insulting my guy?" But I was laughing. I go, "Hey, man, no offense. That's all I had on me." Ozzy goes, "No problem, man." Signs it, Ozzy Osbourne, right? And that was so freaking cool. And the show that night was stellar with Randy Rhoads on guitar. That video is on this channel, by the way. So that was my first brush with, the Prince of Darkness. And it was cool of him to sign that for me. Then, in 1982, I was listening to the Rockline radio show. Now, if I'm wrong on the year, forgive me. It might have been 81 later, but I'm positive it was 82, I think. So, they say tonight's guest on Rockline is Ozzy Osbourne's wife and manager, SHARON Osbourne. And I was tickled pink because every time I called Rockline, I would almost always get through or on the air. Well, on this particular night, I did. And they put me on hold and they said, we've got Derek from Peoria. That's not the name they said because they used my legal name, which I don't use. But they said Derek, which is my radio name. And I'm just filling in the blank with that name. Derek is on the line speaking with SHARON Osbourne from Illinois. It's Derek Moody. You're on the air with SHARON. And she's like, hello there, Derek. And I go, hi, SHARON. I just have a question for you. Keep in mind, I'm like, 15, 16, whatever age I was then. So I asked SHARON, so I know that Ozzy used to do a lot of drugs and chemicals and party, but I want to know, was he into LSD much? And she tried to brush it off like, oh, ho, ho, ho. Ozzy used to do all kinds of things, dear. But that was a long time ago. And those days are gone now. And, like saying he was pretty much a saint at this point. But we all know he was still partying. Although, SHARON did keep him in line, which I got to give her credit for. Probably saved his life. So it is what it is, right? So I got to ask SHARON that. She pretty much blew me off and with, oh, tut. That was a long time ago. He's not like that now. But, okay. So I didn't really get my answer. Then, flash forward to 1984. I'm in St. Louis to see, Ozzy Osbourne live. Was it the Bark at the Moon tour? I don't remember. But the bottom line is Jake E. Lee was on guitar. Phenomenal guitar player. Cool dude. And we thought, how can we meet Ozzy? So me and my buddies walked into the Marriott Hotel in St. Louis, and I had a great idea. Why not take the house phone, which I don't know if they even still have house phones, but I got on the house phone, and I picked it up, and the reception answers and goes, how can I help you? I said, yes, hi, could you please connect me with John Osbourne, Ozzy Osbourne's room, please? I'm with the entourage. And they connected me immediately, and not only did they connect me, but the phone starts ringing, and I'm like, who's going to answer? Well, guess who answered the phone? It was a guy, right? And he answered it, gave the phone right to SHARON. Well, that was Jake E. Lee that answered. But SHARON gets on the line. Hello, who is this? And I said, well, this is a big, fan of Ozzy. No, I didn't. I said, this is Jake E. Lee calling. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I was 15 or 16. And I said, this is Jake. And she goes, ha, 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 that's funny. She goes, hey, Jake, come here. You're on the phone with me. And he's like, huh? So she gives Jake E. Lee the phone. He goes, hello? And I go, okay, man, look, my name's so-and-so. We drove 3.5 hours to see you guys. We're mega fans. And we went so far as to try to track you down on the house phone. And now here you are. And I want to know if you want to come down and say hi, man. And he said, you know what? I'd love to meet you guys. I'll be down in 10 minutes. We were like, no freaking way. 10 minutes later, the whole band comes down, man. It was like the classic lineup that was on that tour. Like, I believe Don Airey. I can't remember the other guys' names. But it was really phenomenal. They all came out and said hi and kind of got on the bus. Jake, however, said, hey, what's going on? He's got his leather jacket on. He's got a scarf around his neck. He's got his shades on. I've got a photo around here, but I showed it on the other video if you find that online about me sharing a doobie with Jake E. Lee is what it's called, right? So Jake E. Lee says, what's up, guys? I introduced my friends, 2 of the other guys with me, Kevin and Bill. And I said, hey, you want to smoke a joint? And he goes, I'd love to. I'm like, yes, bingo. Another pothead. So we sparked the doobie. He goes, hey, man, let's take a walk around the block to be kind of, careful. So we lit up the doobie. I actually let Jake light it up because he was, a rock star. And he was cool enough to indulge us. So Jake lights the doobie. We start walking around the block talking. I'm like, you're brand new as far as being a star. What's it like, man? He goes, oh my God, it's a whirlwind. But I'm so happy to be in Ozzy's band. And I go, have you met like any of your idols yet? He goes, dude, I got to meet Lemmy from Motorhead the other night, and I never met him before. I said, what was that like? He goes, well, it was awkward. I said, in what way? He says, Lemmy walks up to me and looks at me and he goes, yeah, mate, I don't know if I should fight you or fuck you. Ha ha! I thought that was funny as hell. But he said that to Jake because Jake was kind of a pretty boy. I mean, he literally was very feminine looking, and, you know, Lemmy was probably looking at him and noticing that and said, yeah, I don't know if I should fight you or fuck you. That's funny. Then while we're walking, I said, have you met like any of the other guys, like the Aerosmith people or, you know, these guys or these guys? He's like, nope, Lemmy's like the only star I've met so far. Then he looks at my t-shirt. I'm wearing a Wendy O. Williams and the Plasmatics t-shirt from the show they had done opening for Kiss, which is also a story on this channel, which involves LSD. So he sees my picture of Wendy O, right? And she's got her arm up and her mohawk, and she's wearing not very much clothing. And you know what Jake says to me? I go, what do you think about the Plasmatics? And Jake says, oh, I'd like to fuck her. I'm like, God, what is it with all you guys? But, you know, I never thought that way of Wendy. She was always somebody that inspired me vocally. She was hot, totally, but that wasn't what I saw in Wendy. I saw a mentor who became a friend of mine, and I was shocked when he said that. I wasn't offended. It was just like, wow, that's all you got to say about this talented woman is I would like to get in her pants kind of thing. But whatever, didn't offend me. Well, we smoked the doobie. I think we even sparked a second one, and then Jake had to go and jump on the bus with the other guys. That was 84. Flash forward to the year 1999, right? I'm working for Rock 106 Radio, WWCT in Peoria, Illinois. And Zakk Wylde was in town at the local Co-op Records doing an in-store appearance. I didn't know about that till the last second. But I decided, I know what I'll do. To get some brownie points, I will go get Zakk somehow and try to talk him into coming to the radio station to do a little impromptu interview, because he was playing that night at the infirmary in Peoria, but he had hours still. So I thought, well, he's already promoting himself at the in-store. Maybe he'd come over for a 10, 15-minute radio chat. So I walk up to Zakk at the table, get something signed, and I said, hey, Zakk, I'm with the local radio station. Man, we'd love to get you down there and just talk for a few. And he's like, oh, man, you know, I'm pretty busy. After this, I got to go to this guy's house. He was listening to me, and he was a kind of a prick. But he's listening to me, and he goes, I'm going to this guy's house to be on his, podcast. And I thought, I know this guy, and he's got, like, no listeners. Why would you even bother? I didn't say that, though. But he said to me, if you wait around until I'm done here, and then literally follow me in this guy's car, follow me in your car while I'm in this guy's car, and be patient. When I'm done, I'll come out and get in your car, come to the station with you, but you got to give me a ride to my gig. Drop me off at the infirmary after that. I'm like, oh, God, well, yes, sir. So I waited around. It was maybe 30 or 40 minutes. And then what happened was my good friend Linda Jones, he's probably watching this, huge Zakk fanatic, thinks he's hot, loves his music and his voice, and she's just a rocker. So she says, Bloody, I'm going to give Zakk a ride in my car, or something like that. I said, have at it, sweetheart. So Zakk said, cool. I go, this is one of your biggest fans, man. He's like, I'll ride with her. I said, cool, smart man. So Zakk gets in the car with her. They all follow us to the radio station. Linda kind of says her goodbyes, I think. And then we went inside the station, and man, oh man, did I surprise the guy that was on the air, Mr. Don Egan, who did a show called the 10 O'Clock News, which started at 10 p.m. and went till midnight. And he often had live guests on, and I often booked a lot of those guests for him, sometimes a month or two solid of guests. I walk in the door with with Zakk Wylde, and Donnie just about pooped himself, for lack of a better word. But he walked in, and Donnie was immediately nervous. He was cheesing from ear to ear. He's like, wow, how'd you pull this off, Derek? I said, I just asked the guy, and I told him what happened. He goes, unbelievable. And then Zack's like, hey, guys, I don't have a whole lot of time. So I'm like, he's like, can we kind of do this sooner than later? I said, sure, man. He's drinking some coffee, I believe, at the time, or some tea. I don't know if he was drinking something, but it wasn't alcohol. And then all of a sudden, you start talking about this gig coming up that night, and, you know, how he's excited or whatever. And Zakk says, I only have 2 requests. Do not ask me about Guns N' Roses or about leaving Ozzy's band. Because what happened was, as Jake decided while he was with Ozzy, he got an offer to play in Guns N' Roses, right? But those guys ended up breaking up. So he quit Ozzy's band, put his notice in. I'm joining GNR, and they broke up. So he was in a really bad position and playing these small clubs again, and it probably really was getting to him, I imagine. So he says, don't talk about those things on air. And you know, Zakk's a pretty intimidating guy. I wouldn't want to mess with him. He did not have his beard, though. He was clean shaven, so he wasn't quite as scary looking as he became later, kind of like a Viking. Well, we get on the air, and Donnie's doing the interview. Halfway through, he says, hey, man, Derek, since you lined this up, man, do you have anything you want to ask Zakk? Well, at the time, I was kind of into the shock jockery kind of mentality, and I was always out to get, reactions. Well, I didn't really mean to piss off Zakk, but the first thing I said was, so what's the deal, man, with you leaving Ozzy and the Guns N' Roses thing? And Zakk got bright red in the face and looked at me like he wanted to punch me in the teeth. But he answered, man. He literally answered the question. He kept it as simple as he could, and we went past it. But yeah, he was wanting to hurt me at that minute. But I did apologize later, right? So after the interview's over, which, by the way, that interview got lost. Don Egan let somebody borrow it. It was on a cassette tape, and he never saw it again. What a shame, because that would be on my YouTube channel right now. But we did the interview. Zakk didn't say a word about it afterwards, about what I did. So I took him downtown to the infirmary, and all the way down there, we talked about him. He goes, man, I just got back in from Japan, like, this today. I'm exhausted. I've got jet lag, which is freaking awful. Jet lag sucks. Anyway, so I take him down there in the car, and it's just a piece of crap, like $200 car, literally. And Zakk says, hey, bro, do you want to come hang out on the bus, or do you want me to put you on the guest list for the show tonight? I had obligations that night. I don't know what it was. Probably something to do with my daughter, who is like my youngest daughter, Audrey, who is, the reason I was alive at that point was because of her birth. Because I was drinking myself to death back in those days and doing, a lot of partying. When she was born, it gave me a reason to not kill myself, basically. Or, whatever. Unalive myself. Okay, I'm not saying that ever again. So I get him to the gig. We talk. I had to pass up the opportunity to see the band play. I felt bad. But you flash forward from that night to 2002. I was working for another radio station in Bloomington, Illinois called 96.7 IROC, WIHN. I was doing nights from 6 to midnight, whereas at the other station I was doing midnight to 6 a.m. Wild, huh? So I was doing my 6 p.m. to midnight shift, and I had a chance to go see Zakk Wylde at Ozzfest, and my great boss at the time, John Norton, he says, you know what? I'm going to help you get those passes, man, so you can get that interview, but no cussing. Do not cuss. I'm like, okay. So he gets me tickets for Ozzfest, and he says, look, you're going to go interview Jack Black from Tenacious D, and the actor, Jack Black, and then you're going to go on Zakk Wylde's bus and interview him. I'm like, yes! So me and my friend Stone, who was doing the afternoons at IROC, Ben Stone, I love you, brother. Blurry man. Anyway, Ben is sent to accompany me, and I believe he was going to do the interview with Jack Black, me and him, or something like that. And then I was going to do the Zakk Wylde interview. So we're going, I think we were in his car. Yeah, he drove. Well, I hate to admit this because I've never been a big Coke guy at all. But that night, for some reason, I don't know how or who gave it to me because I've never bought Coke in my life. I haven't done that crap in years, even though I was accused of it back in, what year? What a bunch of idiots. That's another story. So I had some Coke. Sue me, you know what I'm saying? And I had it in a little tinfoil package where I could just unfold it and easily, if I wanted to. Well, we got to Ozzfest and we realized we're late. By the time we got to where we were supposed to meet Jack Black, too late. Stone was crushed because Jack Black was one of his heroes, And I got to admit, I love Jack Black, but I never really got into Tenacious D. Don't know why. I went to see him once. I couldn't stand it, man. About halfway through, quarter way through, I'm like, I'm out. Everyone was laughing at times that I didn't find funny. And when I was laughing, which was rare, no one else was. It just wasn't a good fit for me. Again, though, I love Jack Black. So we missed that interview. Next thing you know, we're knocking on Zakk Wylde's bus door. I said, hey, man, remember me? I told him about how we met before. He's like, what's up, Reverend Moody? Because that was my nickname, Reverend Derek Moody. He's like, what's up, Rev? No one would forget a guy named Reverend Derek Moody. Plus, I reminded him of the in-store and how I gave him a ride. And he was super cool, except that's when he was still drinking, man. And if you've ever been around Zakk Wylde when he was drinking hard liquor, watch out. That guy I heard stories about him putting people through walls and beating the crap out of DJs for making jokes about him and stuff. So I didn't want to piss him off. But at that point, I had already had about 3 or 4 of these big beers that were about this big. That's back in the days I was still partying. I do not do Coke or drink booze anymore. Trust me. But that night I was getting them, and they're like $12 a beer. What an idiot. So I'm on there drinking with Zakk. He's drinking whiskey. And there's like 3 other guys on the bus hanging out, probably members of Black Label Society, I'm guessing. I don't know. But we're back there talking. We're having a good time. Zakk's making me feel at home. Then he makes it clear, hey, man, when the boss man comes by, we got to shut all the windows and be on the bus. I go, what do you mean? He goes, that's just the rule, man. Every night he walks out past all the buses and goes to the stage. Nobody can be out to see him. He doesn't want to be distracted because people just jump on him. Hey, Ozzy, Ozzy. So the general rule was you can't be out at all. So it was weird when that point came when Ozzy was coming to walk by. Zakk warned me, all right, man, stay back from the windows, man. You can, watch out there, but don't be jumping out at Ozzy. I'm like, geez, okay. So sure enough, Ozzy walks by with an entourage of like 3 big old security guards. He's all decked out in his stage gear, walks right by the window, like this far away from me. And I'm like, there he is. Why can't I go talk to him? But that was the deal. They kept him shielded from people, right? So we start to do the interview. And I got my tape player rolling. And remember, this is going to be on the radio show, right? And the reason John Norton gave me tickets is to get a good interview with Zakk Wylde. No cussing. Well, by the time we did the interview and I was drinking like a fish and doing the other crap, I was pretty much out of my mind. I wasn't wasted, but I was pretty drunk. And you can hear that interview, by the way, on my other channel, The Church of Rock, all one word. Yeah. But you can find that interview with me and Zakk Wylde from the year 2002. It's pretty funny. A lot of cussing. I don't believe it's censored because when I went on the radio with it, I don't even know if I was able to, actually. I think my boss got so pissed off later that I cussed that he didn't air it at all. But I kept the tapes, of course, to put up later, and I did. But, so we're backstage with Zakk. The boss man went by at some point, Ozzy. That was really a kick. Then Jack and Kelly Osbourne ended up coming on for some reason. They ended up walking on there, and I'm like, hey, what's going on, guys? And, of course, they're like, oh, God, another fan acting like they know us because we're on the Osbournes TV show. But I introduced myself to them, and I got to meet Jack and Kelly. They were nice, but they both seemed kind of shy, believe it or not. And then they were sober, so, I don't know. But that was cool. Got to see Ozzy walk by, got to meet his kids. And then I did my interview with Zakk, which was only about 15 minutes. I think by the time I tried to edit it, it was like 7 minutes or something. Because guess what? I got so high, and he got drunk, and I got drunk, that there was lots of cussing going on. As a matter of fact, too much cussing to where it was pretty much unusable on the air. And that was not the first time or the last time that happened to me, and John Norton was let down. He wouldn't get mad at me. He would be disappointed, and that would bother me because I really looked up to John and didn't want to disappoint him, but I did, and I'd just be sulking. But I did the interview with Zakk. At one point during the interview, which you'll hear if you go look for it, I said something about Randy Rhoads, and I worded it wrong. And he says to me, man, bro, he goes, that was so gay, what you just said. And everyone starts laughing at me, and I'm just like, want to hide my face. He's like, that was gay, man, what you just said, bro. And everyone's gagging. I'm like, oh, it's just tricky interviewing some rock stars because they're touchy. And Zakk was not the kind of guy you joke around with really like that. And I said, okay, yeah, sorry, man, or whatever. So we did the interview, but he's cussing like a fish. I'm cussing like a fish. We both forget about the rule. And the interview is pretty much, unusable. But I ended up, doing stuff with it later. But the interview was like short, but you got to go hear it, man. It's really funny. And when I brought up Linda, the girl that had given him a ride in Peoria to the radio station that was, thinks he's hot and all that, super fan, the stuff he said to her, man, he was talking about oral sex with her and all this other stuff and about his beard and about certain juices getting trapped in his beard, and that's why he didn't shave it and stuff. Oh my God. But then another time when I interviewed him, I don't remember if this was the same time or not, I asked him why he grew his beard, and he told me that before he goes on tour, he likes to eat his wife out and keep the juices and not wash his face, so it reminded him of her every day. And I just like, oh my God, it was hilarious. I'd never heard anybody say that before. So Zakk was kind of an offensive guy, and he got defensive real easily. We finally got through with the interview. I had some of that powder stuff I was telling you about, and I offered Zakk some. You know, he said, I don't do that shit, man. Fuck, that stuff's for, no, I just stick to my booze, man. Go ahead, have at it, bro, but not me. I'm like, okay. So literally I got to the point where I was walking around with Stone, who's sober. He might have had a beer, I don't know. But he was kind of like looking out for me because I was like walking around publicly with a big beer and a thing in my hand of foil with like a gram. And I'm just like walking around with it. And he's like, man, dude, you're going to get us busted. And I was like, nah, I'm fine, because I was drunk. And I just snorted it right in front of people. And they all looking back. What a nut job, man. I could have lost my job. Could have got arrested. That would have been a felony. Could have got Stone in trouble. And I could have lost my everything. But I got away with it. And when I brought back the tapes to the station and my boss heard it, boy, did I get my ass chewed out, man. He was not cool at all with that. Not at all. So that's my stories, really. That's all my little stories that I had and bigger stories, and I just connected them for you. I hope it was interesting. I hope that was worth listening to. But I do encourage you guys to go look under the video section and scroll way down. There's all kinds of stories about Zakk Wylde, Ozzy, lots of Black Sabbath stories that are some really good ones. And I think you will enjoy those videos if you go check them out, my friends. And I do have more Ozzy stories coming, and Sabbath too, down the pike in a while. Thanks once again to my sponsor, C&J Window Cleaning and Power Washing. Once again, their number in New York, 631-310-9858. Thank you, Big Al, and thank you, C&J, for being my first sponsor. If you have a mom or pop shop or any kind of national business at all, or any business at all, and you want to be a sponsor, please hit me up. My email is always in the description area. I want to thank you guys for listening to an old rocker ramble. Yeah, man, ramble on. Anyway, rest in peace to Ozzy. It was a shock today. I was at work. I do part-time work. I won't say where, but I do part-time work now. I'm working and I get a call saying Ozzy died. And I'm like, no way. Well, the people I was working with, they're all diverse, different ages, different, one of them was 77 years old. One was in her 20s, and all the way, a couple more people. And I said, well, Ozzy Osbourne just died. Every one of them turned their head and said, aw, all of them. That was pretty touching, man. But yeah, I'll never forget the day Ozzy died. That's yesterday. Or is it today? It was today. Well, is it past midnight? It is. It was yesterday now. It's awfully strange, though. He did that farewell concert, so either A, he was sicker than we knew, B, he was sick as heck, and that his family knew that he wouldn't be around longer. That's why it was important to put on such a big production to really give Ozzy a true send-off. Or he was sick and he gave up because his rock and roll career was over. He might have let go. I don't know. If anyone knows the answers to those questions, leave a comment below. Hey, man, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking, listening, and watching. And I appreciate every one of you badass rock and rollers. Until next time, thought I had something witty to say, something clever. I got nothing, man. Over and out, 1096. And also, rest in peace, Ozzy Osbourne. You'll never be forgotten, Oz. Man, I'll never forget all those years listening to Black Sabbath and Ozzy solo records, and I still do. We're going to do a proper tribute to Ozzy on my Church of Rock radio show, not this Sunday, but the one following, and you can hear that at 6 p.m. Pacific time every Sunday at kskq.org. It's called the Church of Rock, been on for 25 plus years. Live FM radio, it's the best. Thanks for being here, guys. Talk soon with more metal, punk, rock and roll, and curveball tales. Cheers.